Hi, I'm Tony Northup, and this is a free 1-hour tutorial for the Canon EOS M5. You can watch this instead of reading the user manual, which is terrible. You've broken into it. If you have a different camera, if you want to send a tutorial to your friend that's like this, go to sdp.io/tutorials. You'll find tutorials for more than 30 popular cameras just like this. First of all, this is a long video, but you don't have to sit and watch the whole thing. You probably already know some of this because I make it for both beginning and advanced photographers. So look at the table of contents in the description of this video. You'll see time codes that you can click to jump forward to different parts of the video. So if you know the basic stuff, you can jump ahead. At the end of the video, I suggest some different lenses and tripods and stuff. If you just want to get right to the gear stuff, that's in there too. I'm going to cover everything you need to get great pictures, everything I consider to be essential to photography, but I'm not going to get into like how to use the special effects in camera, like black and white and tilt shift and stuff, because I figure either you're going to do that on your computer if you're that kind of person, or if you're putting it on Facebook or Instagram, you'll use your phone, but there's no reason you'd want to do it on the camera, so I'm just not going to cover that kind of thing. Up first, let's go over the camera physically and how to assemble it. When you get it, it'll have a cap on the body. You'll just push this little switch here to attach or release lenses. That just releases it. And when you go to attach your lens, you'll take the caps off of it. You'll line up the white dot on the lens with the white dot on the body here. Line them up like that, and then you'll twist it clockwise until it clicks. Then I always give it a little wiggle to make sure it's on there solid. And taking it off, you push that button in, twist it counterclockwise until it comes loose. You can get lots of different lenses. That's the magic of a camera like this. Interchangeable lenses. Beneath it, you see the sensor there. Don't touch that. We'll put that lens back on. The battery and memory card, your digital film, those are located under here. To get to that, you'll slide this little panel to the side. It will spring open. Now, your battery is held in by this little gray switch. So the first time you insert the battery, what you'll do is you'll look for the connectors on the battery there, and the connectors inside the compartment. Basically, the connectors are going to go towards the back of the camera, and then you'll slide it right in until it clicks. Right above there is where you put your SD card. This is your digital film. Push it label side towards the front of the camera in until it clicks, and then removing it is just pushing it in until it pops out like that. Then battery compartment closes just by pushing it down and then sliding it in. Physically, this has a tilting screen, so it flips down like that. You can also flip it up like this. That's super useful. If you want to shoot low to the ground, you can hold it like that without having to, lay on your belly on the ground. Or if you want to shoot over a crowd, you can flip it like that and take pictures of people over the crowd. And of course, you can flip it directly forward for things like selfies. Before you can use the lens, if you have this 15 to 45 kit lens, you'll see it retracts to make it small. There's a switch here on the lens. You'll pull that forward, and while you have it held forward, you'll twist the lens, and that unlocks it. So now you see you can't go back. This marker here is showing the focal length. 15 millimeters is wide angle, while 45 is more telephoto. So push that switch back up and then twist it until it locks in place when you want to just stow it away in your bag. This just makes it more compact. Your camera probably didn't come with a memory card, so you'll want to buy one. I'm just going to give you a little bit of advice around that. Everybody will at some point fill up their memory card, and at that point it's frustrating because you want to take more pictures, but there's no more room. You can take thousands of pictures, but eventually you'll fill that up. So I suggest getting a bigger memory card. I would like to get like either a 64 gig or a 128 gig memory card for this camera. You don't necessarily need high-end memory card. Memory cards come in like slower speeds or really high speeds and like pro extreme versions of them. There's not really any justification for getting that. You can get an inexpensive SD card, but spend your money on a higher capacity card, something like this 128 gig card here. You can use my link here, sdp.io/SD, to shop for memory cards on Amazon. You'll see my links throughout this video. If you use those, I get a few pennies out of every dollar, and that helps pay for this whole production. You can, if you want to transfer your pictures to a computer, which is how most people would be sharing them, you can hook a USB cable right into the camera. The USB port is over here. You can see it's a micro USB cable. Your camera came with that cable, though it's a pretty standard cable. That's kind of a pain. I never really like to do that. Instead, I much prefer using a a memory card reader, a USB 3 memory card reader, you'll find the pictures unload like 10 times faster, and it's less wear on that stupid port, and it's just much easier. If your computer doesn't have an SD card reader built into it, it probably does, but if it doesn't, this is a great one, sdp.io/SD reader. It's very fast, and we just like it a lot. It's also easy to travel with if you use a laptop. There's a couple ports on the outside of the camera that I want to show you. Underneath the left side here, there's a little panel. The meaning of the ports is indicated on the outside of the panel. So as we flip this open, you'll see a port here for a remote shutter trigger. That's a little thing that looks a little smaller than a headphone jack. The USB port, as I just mentioned, for connecting it directly to your computer, something like you can tether with the software that comes with it, though I don't find that useful. And then there's a microphone port here for hooking up an external mic. And I'll give you suggestions at the end of the video for a remote shutter trigger and a good microphone that will improve the sound a lot. Over on the right side of the camera, you have an HDMI port here. HDMI, it's like an audio video connection, a digital connection. It's probably what hooks up your cable box to your TV. And this is a micro HDMI port. It's a little bitty port. So you would need a micro HDMI to HDMI cable or adapter if you want to plug it into a TV or something. If you do that, you can look at pictures played back on your TV. Maybe you want to gather around and make a slideshow without using a computer. That's possible, but I'll say nowadays, most people just prefer to look at the pictures on the back of the camera or on Instagram or something. So that HDMI port might not get a whole lot of use out of it. Let's talk about the actual process of taking a picture. First thing you'll do, get the memory card and SD card in there and then turn the camera on. The switch is over here on the left underneath the bone dial. So I'll click that over to on. And now all I need to do is, the shutter button here is a 2-stage button. You'll push it down halfway and it'll focus. And then you'll push it down all the way to actually take a picture. So that's all it is. You'll focus. You can see the focusing point there will turn green when it gets focus. And when you see the green, you know it's in nice and sharp, and it will take a picture. You can also use the touch screen here to change the focusing point and then just take a picture there. You can take pictures with the back of the screen like this, kind of like using a cell phone where you'll hold it out. The other way to do it is to use the viewfinder. If you hold it up to your eye, the camera will automatically switch to the viewfinder, and you will see that everything looks a lot clearer. And especially if you're outside in bright sun, it can be really hard to see the back of the screen, and holding it up to your eye will let you review everything much without any sort of distractions. You can use the viewfinder for just about everything, including reviewing pictures and navigating menus. So like if you're in a dark room and turning the screen on would bother everybody, like sometimes if you're in a dark concert and you want to make sure you got the picture, you can actually use the electronic viewfinder up here to review your pictures. While you're taking a picture, you can show different information on the back of the screen by hitting the info button. The info button is right above the directional pad here. Hit that button and it's going to change the information that you see. Just push it multiple times to iterate through different sets of information. This is the standard screen that I usually use, but the histogram here is super, super useful. The histogram shows you the brightness of the image, and it's so nice that you can see it in real time, either using the back of the screen or with your eye up to the viewfinder. I really like the histogram. If you aren't sure what a histogram is, check chapter 4 in my book, Stunning Digital Photography, and I'll tell you all about it. After you've taken a picture, you'll probably want to review it. The camera will automatically show you that picture. You can turn that off, by the way. But if you want to review a picture at any time, hit the blue play button down there. That brings up the last picture you took. Let's see if we can find my selfie back here. There we are. Now that you're reviewing a picture, you can use the touch screen to just pull in. And that's really nice for panning around. I can see the camera focused on my cameraman Justin back there and not on me. So that's useful. That might mean that I need to retake the picture. You can also flip through pictures by pulling back until it shows thumbnails. Me trying to figure out some aspect of the camera. And then you can swipe through the different pictures. So the touch interface works pretty well for reviewing pictures. Just like when you're taking a picture, you can hit the info button here to view different information about the photo, including seeing a luminance histogram or an RGB histogram, just showing you the brightness of it. If you don't like a picture, you can hit the delete key here, which is on the bottom of the directional pad. It's really small, but I'll push that, and then it will prompt me to erase the image. So I'll select that and erase it. Another thing you can do while you're reviewing a picture is to add a rating to it. So I'll hit the Q button there, and I'll scroll down to the star, the rating, and now I can scroll over, and if I really like a picture, I can mark it 5 stars. What that does is, well, nothing really in your camera, but if you import your pictures into an image editing tool, something like Adobe Lightroom, which organizes your pictures for you, those 5-star pictures will still have 5 stars on your computer. That way, if you're flipping through your vacation pictures and you took 500 pictures, but you know you have 3 great pictures, you can mark them 5 stars on your camera and not have to dig through the whole collection. I really like the ability to rate pictures like that. You can control the brightness of the screen too. Hit the menu button, go over to the wrench icon, and go to the second page, and you'll see display brightness. Select that, and then you can make it brighter or darker. It'll pretty much adjust itself automatically, but sometimes you'll be out in full sun and you want to make it a little bit brighter, or maybe it'll just be too bright. Anyway, just wanted to show you where that was. If you're using the electronic viewfinder here and things aren't crystal clear, then you probably want to adjust the diopter. Now, the diopter is basically like dialing in your glasses or contact lens prescription into the viewfinder. And it can benefit anybody because almost nobody's eyes are absolutely perfect. If you look under the viewfinder here, you see a little slide that marked with a plus and a minus, and it's a little easier to see if you actually flip the screen down. So what you'll do is you'll hold this up to your eye and you'll look at the text at the bottom of the screen, like the shutter speed and all that, and you're going to slide this back and forth while you have it up to your eye until everything is as sharp as it can possibly be. Now, one of the problems that I've had with this diopter is that it tends to get hit accidentally. So if everything's sharp on the back screen but everything's blurry in the viewfinder, it's probably because that diopter got hit accidentally and you need to go through and just kind of repeat that process. It's a common problem that people have. Let's get into actual different shooting modes. This camera has a bunch of scenes that like portraits and sports, and that's fine to use, but all those do is change a couple of fundamental camera settings, and most people find it easier to just take direct control over those. So I'm going to show you how to use what they call the creative modes. This is the mode dial here on the left. You can change it by pushing the dial and the button in the center and then twisting it. Your camera probably came in this like fully auto mode. It can be annoying because the camera will make lots of decisions for you that you don't necessarily want it to do. A big step up from that is to slide it over to program mode, P mode, where everything is still automatic, but the camera kind of gives you a little more credit and assumes you know a little bit more about what you're doing. But the first mode I'm really going to talk about is Aperture Priority. First, the aperture is like the iris of your eye. It's an opening in the lens that can be closed down to restrict the amount of light coming in. And when you take control of Aperture Priority mode by pushing that center button in and then moving the mode dial to AV, aperture value, now you get control over how big that iris is. Let's take a look at a slide that kind of demonstrates what this iris might look like. Over on the left, you see a big, wide iris opening, and then as we choose higher, what we call f-stop numbers, up to f32 here, the opening will be really, really small, letting in less and less light. I want you to notice something weird about the f-stop numbers. f2 is a big opening, while f32 is a really small opening, and that seems counterintuitive, right? The big opening should be the big number. But if you look at the way the numbers are written, it's like f/2, f/4. It's almost like a fraction. So if you're a math person, you can think about that number as being in the denominator, because of course 1/4 is smaller than 1/2 and 1/32 is smaller than 1/4. That just helps make a little bit more sense. Now, besides just restricting the amount of light that comes into the camera, the other impact of changing the aperture is that you can control the amount of background blur. With a low f-stop number, you can get a very blurry background, and like the image on the left here, that isolates your subject, separates them from the background. It draws the viewer's attention to whatever you focused on and hides everything else. Choosing a higher f-stop number like f8 brings more of the image into focus. telling a little bit more about the context of the situation, a little bit more story. So on the first image, it's clearly just a picture of Chelsea, but on the second image, it's Chelsea in a New York City street. The background isn't too distracting, but we know more about where she is. In the final image on the right at f22, that high f-stop number brings everything into focus, making everything sharp. And now, not only do we have a sense for context, but we can actually make out individual cars and buildings. So you as a photographer get to choose which of those pictures you want to take by choosing Aperture Priority mode and then changing that f-stop value. So the way you'll do that is switch to AV mode here, and then you're going to move the main dial, this dial right on the shutter button here. So if you look at the bottom of the screen, right down here, it's really small, but you can see it's showing me the f-stop number as I change it. So if I scroll to the right, now I'm at f8, f11, f16, f22. If I go all the way to the left, I'll select the lower and lower f-stop numbers. Not all lenses support the same f-stop numbers. So this lens has a minimum f-stop number of f3.5 at the widest setting. If I zoom in all the way to 45 millimeters, now the minimum f-stop number is f6.3. It's a variable aperture zoom. Different lenses could go all the way down to f2 for the system, or you could even get faster lenses adapted from the Canon EF lens lineup like that one. And as a general rule, on this particular camera, you'll probably most of the time be using the lowest f-stop number because none of the lenses will be able to create the kind of background blur you see in my example picture here, but choosing higher f-stop numbers can increase the amount of sharpness that you get in the background in some situations. For detailed information about f-stops, visit this link here, sdp.io/f-stop. That's just another completely free video that will teach you everything you could ever want to know about Aperture Priority and using Aperture. The next mode I want to talk about is Shutter Priority. Shutter Priority is like blinking your eyes. It controls how long the shutter is open, letting light hit the sensor. A really short shutter speed freezes motion, but doesn't let in much light. If you use a really long shutter speed, that's going to let more light in, but something that's moving fast enough will appear blurry in your image because it's capturing everything that happens during the course of that shutter being open. For detailed information about shutter speeds and camera settings in general, visit this link, sdp.io/settings. Now in Aperture Priority mode, the main dial here next to the shutter button, that controlled the f-stop number, the aperture value. If we push the center button in on the mode dial here and switch it over to TV, now the mode dial, the main dial, changes personalities. Now it's going to control the shutter speed. So as I look at the back of the screen here, in the lower left corner here, it's showing me the shutter speed. And I can scroll it to the left and get a really slow shutter speed. Oh, now look, everything's getting really bright because it's letting in so much light that the picture is going to be overexposed. I can also scroll it all the way to the right and use a really fast shutter speed. Now, why you want sharp pictures, right? So most of the time you might want to be completely freezing motion, but high shutter speeds have a negative side effect, and that's that they require your camera to be more sensitive to light, to crank up what they call the ISO setting, the sensitivity of it. And that leads to really noisy pictures. So generally, you want to use the slowest shutter speed you can that doesn't allow unwanted motion. There are also times when a slower shutter speed will show motion in the image for the purposes of storytelling. And this is another creative choice that you as a photographer get to make. Here's 3 pictures of my daughter, like 7 years ago when she was really young. We're on one of those spinning merry-go-round things. And I took pictures at 3 different shutter speeds, but we were moving at the same speed in all 3 pictures. The only difference was the shutter speed. On the left, at 1/8 of a second, the background is nice and blurred, and it tells the story of us spinning. It shows the motion. When I increased the shutter speed to 1/30th, there was much less motion. There's still a little bit of movement in there. You can tell that there's movement, but it's not as much. And at 1/125th, you can't see the motion at all. It looks like we were just sitting there completely still. So you can see, even though we were doing the same thing, the shutter speed changed the story, and it changes how viewers will perceive what was happening here. That's why photography is so much fun. You get creative control over the story that you tell. One more mode I want to talk about is manual mode. This is the like high pillar of photography skill. At least that's what everybody thinks. In reality, manual mode isn't used all that often, even by the most skilled professionals. Manual mode is kind of for niche situations, but there are plenty of times when you do want to use manual mode. You push this button in on the mode dial here and switch it over to M. Now what happens is you get complete control over both the shutter speed and the aperture. See, those two values work together to determine how bright your image is going to be. And when you're in shutter priority, you're controlling the shutter speed, but you tell the camera, hey, you take care of that aperture, make it whatever you want to get my picture looking good. And then when you're in aperture priority, the camera takes over the shutter speed. So manual mode, you now get control over both of those. The main dial still controls the shutter speed down here, and the secondary dial here, near your directional pad, is now controlling the f-stop. So you're going to work kind of your forefinger and your thumb to change the aperture and the f-stop to get exactly what you want. Now that's a lot to take on, especially if you're new to camera settings. If you do want to learn how to use manual, visit this link, sdp.io/go manual. I have a whole video where Chelsea and I walk you through step by step exactly how to get your settings, and it's not that hard. It's actually pretty easy, but you don't need to do it right away. Feel free to rely on those automatic modes. Let me take just a second to talk about my book, Stunning Digital Photography. It's not just a book, it's a video book, so it has over 14 hours of video now in it. You can just watch the videos, or you can read the book, but for best learning, you'll kind of read a section and then watch a related video about it. It's by far the fastest way to learn photography. It's also the #1 photography book in the entire world. Go to Amazon, look up Stunning Digital Photography, or look up Tony Northup, and you can see external reviews about it. The ebook with all the videos is $9.99, $9. It's cheap. If you want the paperback book, it's about $20 or so. If you're outside of the US, or if you just want to buy it directly from us, you can visit sdp.io/store. We ship worldwide. Let me just say that I'm teaching you how to use the buttons and dials on your camera, but that's like teaching somebody to drive by just telling them where the gas pedal and brake pedal are and just being like, go for it, go out in traffic. They're going to kill a lot of people, right? So photography, like driving, is more art than science. It's not about knowing which buttons to push. It's about understanding how and when to use it. It's about storytelling and light and posing and emotion and composition and timing and planning. And these are the things that make a great picture, not picking the right f-stop number. I teach you all of that in my book, Stunning Digital Photography. If you get into organizing your pictures, because you'll probably take more than a couple of pictures and then you'll have a hard time finding them later, Adobe Lightroom is perfect for that. And I can't tell you Lightroom, but I do have a book on Lightroom that'll make Lightroom much easier to use. I also have a book on Photoshop for people seriously into editing. And if you want to know about lenses, flashes, if you're interested in all that gear stuff, or you're having a hard time figuring out what you should buy next, check out my photography buying guide. These are all available on Amazon or at my store, and they're outrageously cheap, and they all include tons of videos. Also, just subscribe, because subscribing is completely free. I'm going to give you a couple more completely free links to information on different styles of photography. And first up, if you're interested in night photography, actually taking pictures at night, visit sdp.io/np. There's a video there that will get you started. If you're interested in landscapes, sdp.io/ls. Free videos. And for wildlife, visit sdp.io/WL. Now let's talk about bulb mode. If you noticed in shutter speed, you can, in manual mode or shutter priority mode, if you keep going left with the main dial, you can go all the way down to 30 seconds. And that, when you push the shutter, that will keep the shutter open for a full 30 seconds. And then 30 seconds later, it'll close the shutter, and if you're taking pictures like in the woods at night, 30 seconds can be the right shutter speed for to properly expose your picture. And there are even times when you want to go longer than 30 seconds, like maybe make a 2-minute or a 5-minute or a 10-minute exposure, maybe during star trails, something like that. For those times, you want bulb mode, and I'll show you just how to do that. So once you are in manual mode only, you have to be in manual mode, get all the way to 30 seconds, and then just keep going to the left. And you'll see it changes the shutter speed to bulb there. In bulb mode, the shutter stays open for as long as you have your finger held down on the shutter. So I hold it down for 1 second and then release it. I'll make a 1-second exposure. If I hold my finger on there for 20 minutes, I'll make a 20-minute exposure. If you want to make a 20-minute exposure, though, you don't want to stand there with your finger on it. You'd shake the camera and you'd get bored. What you should do instead is get yourself a remote shutter trigger that can lock open. And at the end of this video, I have a link to a remote shutter trigger that you can use. It's only like $20. Don't buy the Canon one, it's overpriced. Let's talk about different shutter modes. By default, I'm going to put this back in just AV mode here. By default, if you push and hold the shutter down, it's just going to take one picture. And that's fine, except I almost always like to rattle off 2, 3, 4 pictures at a time, just in case one is shaky. Especially with living things like people, sometimes they'll be blinking during one picture. There's no excuse for that in the digital world. We don't have to worry about wasting film. Somebody might blink, so you'll rattle off 3 pictures and then you'll just pick the best one and delete the other ones because you can't time everything perfectly. So I always switch these cameras out of single mode and into what we call a continuous shutter mode, where we'll rattle off more pictures. The easiest way to do that on this camera is to hit this Q button here in the middle of your directional pad. You're going to be using this button a lot. Get to know that button. You push this and a little menu will pop up. And now over on the left side here, see that box? That's indicating a single picture. So I'll touch that and now I can switch it over to continuous high. And now when I hold down the shutter button, let's change that focusing point. There we go. It's taking a lot of pictures. It's taking them really fast. If you think that's too fast, if you want it to be slower, you can hit that Q button again. Select that, and then instead of continuous high with the H, just select the last one here. But for me, I'm cool with continuous high. That works pretty well. I pretty much just leave it on that mode all the time. Another shutter option is to use a self-timer. Self-timer delays the picture. So you probably did this when you were a kid and your dad put the camera on a tripod and wanted to get a family picture. He'd set a timer, push the shutter, and then while it was beeping or waiting 10 seconds, he would run around and put his arm around everybody. You can still do that. It's still useful for selfies like that. Self-timers are also useful for reducing the amount of shake that you get when you're putting the camera on a tripod for landscapes or macro photography. To set the self-timer, once again, we're going to hit the Q button here. And this time we're going to go down to the very last item on the left here. It looks like a little clock. So I'll touch that, and now I can pick between a 10-second self-timer, which again, kind of running around and putting your arm around your family, that's what that's good for, or a 2-second self-timer, which is perfect for eliminating what we call shutter shake, when you take a picture on a tripod only and you don't want to shake it. This next option here allows you to choose how many pictures you want to take, and this is even better for those self-portraits. So you can see it says press the info button to set it. I'll hit the info button here. And now I can set exactly what I want the delay to be, but I can also make it take a bunch more pictures, up to 10 pictures. I was just saying, continuous shutter is useful because sometimes people blink. And those self-portraits where people have to run back and forth between their family and the camera, there's always somebody who blinks or put their fingers up or something. So when I'm taking one of those self-portraits, I always set it to take 10 pictures. And that way, when those 10 seconds expires, I have it set now, you can see it's blinking as it's indicating that it's winding down at 10 seconds. It starts blinking fast, and then bam, it takes a picture, waits a second, takes another picture. So that's perfect. Everybody will kind of figure out, oh, we have 1 second between pictures. You can go back and find the absolute best one, and you're guaranteed to get one that looks just great. Let's talk about different focusing modes. This camera actually has a really, really flexible focusing system. It's one of my favorite things about it. If you want to know more about focusing systems in general, watch this video, the free video at sdp.io/focus. Once again, you're going to be able to control the focusing mode by hitting the Q button in the middle there. And now, if you look over on the left here at the very top, you can see it shows, right now it says AF and then just a box. So you have 3 different focusing modes that you can choose from. AF in the box is a single focusing point, which you can control just by touching the screen to put that focusing point anywhere. Another way to do that is to hold the camera up to your eye, and now you can still kind of drag it around to set the focusing point. So it works whether or not you have your eye to the viewfinder. Another focusing mode besides that single autofocus point, that's my favorite mode. That's just the mode I use all the time. Let's get back into the Q menu here, select that. Another mode, and this might be the default for your camera, is Smooth Zone AF. So if I select that, now you can see it's picking a bigger zone. And, well, that works okay. But the problem with that is that the camera is more likely to focus maybe on somebody's hair or their body rather than their eyes. The camera is going to pick anywhere inside that zone, whatever it finds focus first, and that might not be exactly where you want to focus. So I always prefer to select a small focusing point. The third focusing option, hitting that Q button again, is the autofocus face tracking. And this is a really useful mode for automatic focusing. So let's try this with a selfie. I'll see if I have a face. Okay, so as I hold it out, you can see now it's drawing a box around me. And, oh, I had that self-timer set still, so it's blinking. But you can see it's tracking my face pretty well, and it's keeping me in focus. Oh, it started video recording. And if I move it closer like that, it's going to do a pretty good job of keeping me in focus. So it's finding faces and detecting them automatically. It's perfect if what you're taking a picture of is a face. That's about what there is to know about focusing. But I do want to show you another trick for moving the focusing point, and that's using touch and drag AF. Now, as I mentioned, you can hold the camera up to your eye and kind of use your thumb to move the focusing point around. And one challenge with that is it's just logistically hard to get your thumb all the way to this far corner while you're keeping your finger on the shutter there. I don't have a pianist hand, so I can't really reach all the way there. There's a setting that should be the default, but it's not. So I'll show you how to go in and change that. Hit the menu button here, go to the camera icon, page 2, and then the next to last option, touch and drag AF settings. Just going to select that. Touch and drag AF should be set to enable. That's the default. And then for the position method, I like it to be set to absolute. But for the active touch area, here we're going to change the default from whole panel to top right. Top right is kind of where your thumb falls when you're holding it up to your eye. So now, instead of requiring me to drag my thumb across the entire screen, I can drag my thumb around just the upper corner here. And you'll have to hold the camera up to your eye to really see this in effect. But now when you do this, you can see it's just tracking your thumb really closely, allowing you to very quickly move focusing points anywhere in the frame. If touch and drag AF is not working, it might be turned off. There's a button here that will turn it on or off right next to the lens. You can kind of hit it with your middle finger as you're working the shutter button. Push that button, and you can see by default it will toggle touch and drag AF on or off. So just make sure that's on. I pretty much just use it all the time. It's never caused any problems for me. There might be times when you want to manually focus. Maybe autofocus is just failing you. This camera does support autofocus. The lens that comes with your camera doesn't have a manual focus switch like most other Canon cameras. Instead, you need to go and push the button on the back here. You'll see on this directional pad, if you push to the left, it says MF, just push that. And now you're in manual focus mode. So if you push the shutter button halfway, you can see it's not trying to focus anymore. Instead, I'm going to grab this outer ring and just twist that, and you can see now I get the opportunity to manually focus. If you want to be really precise about the manual focusing, maybe you're doing macro photography or landscape photography, hit this magnifying glass down there. Hit that, and it will zoom in for you. And now you can be sure that you really, really nail focus like that. You can even zoom in further by twisting the main dial here after you hit the zoom button, so you can control how tightly you zoom in. When you're done using manual focus, just hit that button again to switch back to autofocus. If you are into manual focusing, this camera has a really useful feature called focus peaking, which will highlight the parts of the picture that are currently in focus. So it just makes autofocus to be a little faster. I'll say focus peaking is not perfect. You can see the part of your picture will be highlighted by focus peaking, and then when you get it back on your computer, you'll discover you still missed focus a little bit. So it's a focusing aid, but it's never going to replace the magnification. Magnification to 1:1 is the only sure way to be sure to. It's the only sure way to nail focus. So to turn on focus peaking, I'm going to hit the menu button here. The camera icon, scroll over to page 4, and then MF peaking settings. I'll select that. I want to turn peaking to on. And for the level, for me, high is usually right. And then the red color is fine. If you're taking a picture of a red car, you might want to change it to yellow or blue, but otherwise red is going to be fine. So let's zoom into the screen here. And you can see the focus peaking doesn't do anything in autofocus mode. But if I switch over to manual focus, now you can kind of see the red lines appearing as I get it in focus. See how those letters have red around them? And as I get through, you can see the whole screen kind of comes into focus. See that pink through there? If I zoom in tight, you can see it a little more clearly. See, as soon as I nail focus, everything just kind of turns red. There we go. And that's what focus peaking does. It's pretty useful. Another option for you if you don't like switching between autofocus and manual focus is to enable AF plus MF. AF will work, and then at any point you can just grab that ring and manually focus. And that's kind of what I prefer to do. To turn that on, you'll hit the menu button. I'll go to page 3 of the camera icon, and then I'll go down to focus mode. So if I select that, I can select AF plus MF. So now the camera will autofocus, but I can also grab that focusing ring, look, zoomed in automatically for me, and just make sure that it's precise. It's really good if you want to be sure that you focus on somebody's eye instead of on their glasses or something. You can zoom in like that and then just grab the focusing ring and set it perfectly. If you're reading my book, Stunning Digital Photography, in chapter 4, you'll see I suggest that people use a technique called back button focusing to decouple focusing from the shutter button and assign it to a different button on the camera. Now, this might not make much sense as to why you might do that. If you want to understand why you might do back button focusing, watch this video, sdp.io/YBB. Basically, it's really useful because the camera always focuses when you push the shutter button halfway, but there are times in photography when you don't want the camera to refocus, when you focused once and you don't want to refocus it. And it happens often enough that it makes sense to assign a separate button for the focusing. With this camera, though, I find back button focus to be difficult enough that I just don't use it anymore, because really there should be a button right here for back button focusing. I will show you how to use back button focusing in case you really want to. What you'll need to do is to push this button instead. Unfortunately, it kind of requires you to hold the camera with 2 hands and take your thumb away from the camera body there. So to turn on back button focusing, you'll hit the menu button, and then you'll go up to this little custom settings here, and you'll go down to CFN2 Others. You'll select that and go to Custom Controls, this one, and then you'll select it. And the first thing you're going to do is you're going to turn off focusing from the shutter button. So I'll select that, and this is changing the behavior of it. What we want is, you can see by default it's AF and AE lock. What we should select is AE lock AF, the second option there. So now that we've assigned focusing to the star button and not the shutter button, one other step is to turn off continuous AF on the camera. Continuous AF will cause the camera to constantly autofocus no matter what you do. So you'll hit the menu button here, go to the camera icon, page 3, and then scroll down to continuous AF there. Select that and then turn that off. Now, what will happen is, you can see, even if I move to a blurry area, the camera's not going to autofocus until I hit this star button. Now everything quickly snaps right into focus. Let's talk about ISO. ISO controls the sensitivity of the camera to light. A low ISO number, like ISO 100, is great for taking pictures outdoors because it produces the cleanest possible images. A high ISO value, like ISO 6400, will let you take pictures in really dim environments. By default, the camera will set its ISO automatically, and that's good for almost everybody, including like serious pros. I almost always use auto ISO. There are times when you want to manually set the ISO, like if you're in a studio environment and working with studio lights, you need to take control of that. This camera makes changing the ISO so easy. By default, it's assigned to the dial function button, this third dial up here. And you can see just by turning the button, turning the dial, I'm changing the ISO value here. So by default, it'll be set to auto, which you can always get to by just scrolling this all the way to the left. You can also manually select a value just by turning it. I like this dial function to be set to ISO. That's what I just always keep it at. If yours is not set to ISO, just push this dial function button a few times and you can switch between the different options, which in this mode are ISO and white balance. So I'll just make sure it's set to ISO and then I can change that. That's really all there is to changing the ISO. Another option you need to know about is exposure compensation. If you have ever taken a picture and it ended up too dark or too bright, then exposure compensation is what you need. That you can fix that. The camera will sometimes, you'll have your friend in front of an overcast sky and the sky is so bright that the camera will expose the picture for the sky, and you'll have a great looking sky, but then your friend will just be in complete shadow and you can't even see their face. You want to fix that with exposure compensation. And it's super easy to do on this camera. You just move this dial here on the top. It's marked. So 0 means no change. Just use the camera's auto exposure. If you go to +1, that means one stop of exposure compensation. So the picture becomes brighter. We can see it in real time on the back of the screen. Here's 0, here's +1, the screen gets nice and bright. Here's +2, screen gets even brighter. If I go down to -1 and -2, the screen gets dimmer and dimmer. So you can literally just look at the screen and dial this up or down until you're happy with the exposure and then take your picture. And when you're done, you always want to reset the exposure compensation back to 0. Otherwise, the next time you go to take a picture, it's going to be all out of whack and it'll just mess you up while you figure out what's going on. Now, if you want detailed information about exposure compensation, visit sdp.io/EC. Let's talk about bracketing. Bracketing is a technique that was developed in the film era because back then you couldn't see the picture that you were taking, so you couldn't look at it and be like, oh, that's underexposed, I need to dial in exposure compensation. So you had to wait until you got your pictures developed, and then you'd be like, oh, that's underexposed, I have to go back and take the picture again, if that's even possible. So what photographers would do is they would take 3 or more exposures at different exposure values. They'd take one picture that was what they thought was properly exposed, they'd underexpose one picture, and then they would overexpose a picture. That way, when they got back to developing the pictures, if they were wrong at their guess of the exposure, they could pick one of the other pictures and they'd be guaranteed to have one exposure that was right. Nowadays, we can see the exposure right away, so it's not as important. But we still do use bracketing for high dynamic range imaging, HDR. HDR allows you to get like noise-free pictures that you can print really large and have them look absolutely great. If you're interested in HDR imaging, check Chapter 10 of my book, Stunning Digital Photography. To turn on bracketing here, you have to go into the menus, unfortunately. You'll hit the menu button, you'll go to the camera icon, and then page 4. The last item down here is poorly named AEB, Auto Exposure Bracketing. I wish it just said bracketing. Turn the bottom dial here to increase or decrease the exposure bracketing. And what I usually do is I do right out here to ±2 stops. In the digital era, that's kind of the best way to do bracketing. And then you need to be sure to hit the set button right here in the middle. If you don't hit that set button, it will forget your bracketing settings. So now I'll focus it and take 3 pictures. And you can see as I review those images, my first picture using the camera's auto exposure, a picture that was underexposed, and a picture that was overexposed. Just like I told you to set your exposure compensation back to 0, you can go into the menu, go back here, and reset your AEB, your auto exposure bracketing, back so that the next time you're taking pictures, you aren't bracketing everything that you do. An alternative to bracketing, and something I recommend to just about everybody, is to change your camera from taking JPEG pictures over to taking RAW pictures. JPEG is this file format that we all use to share pictures on the web. Just about every picture you see is in JPEG format. JPEG compresses your pictures so they're nice and small. That makes them easy to share. But that compression also throws out a bunch of good information, like lots of detail in those blown out clouds or your friend's face that's hidden in the shadows. It probably actually captured all that detail in your friend's face, but the JPEG image throws it away. If you change your camera to shoot RAW pictures, you will capture all that detail, and you can use a tool like Adobe Lightroom to bring back those details and get great looking pictures. So, to turn that on, something I suggest everybody do, I'll hit the menu button here, and I'm going to go right over to Camera, page 1. It's the first option because it's the most important, right? By default, you'll probably have it just set to JPEG. I am going to move the main dial here to switch it over to RAW. So now that it's in RAW recording, right now I have it set to record both a RAW image and a JPEG image. So every time I take a picture, it will take 2. That way, if I'm not sure, if I haven't yet figured out how to do raw processing in Lightroom, then I still have a JPEG that I can fall back on and share easily. If you get to the point where you're comfortable processing raw files in Lightroom, I would just turn that JPEG off and save yourself a little bit of space. So even if you don't use Lightroom now, even if you don't know how to edit raw files now, if you think you might in the future, it's nice to take raw images now because you can always go back and edit your images. I promise you'll have some great image that future you will want to do extra editing on, and raw files make that so much better. For detailed image examples about why raw files are better than JPEG files, visit this link, sdp.io/rawvjpeg. It'll all make sense when you watch that video. Let's talk about metering modes. This is something you can just skip past because there's no need to ever change the metering mode on this camera. I've already taught you everything you need to know. But if you're an old school camera junkie and you like to use spot metering and stuff like that, I'm just going to show you where it is. Getting back onto the main screen here, I'm going to hit the Q button. And now this icon here on the right in the middle with the circle, I'm going to push that. And this allows me to select different metering modes. So spot metering will decide the exposure for the entire scene from a little tiny spot in the scene, whereas the default here will more intelligently use all the information in the scene to create a balanced exposure. And I always use evaluative metering. I never use spot metering, not since the film days. Flash. This camera has a built-in flash. You can turn it on at any point by hitting the flash button here, and it pops right up. It doesn't necessarily mean that the camera is going to take a flash picture, though, because that's going to depend on whether or not the flash is turned on, but it's probably on by default. If you look at the upper left corner of the screen there, you'll see the lightning bolt, which has become the international symbol for flash for some reason. And right now it's on. But if it's not on and you want it to be on, just hit the directional pad here and push it over to the right. And now you can see you can choose between on, slow synchro, or off. What slow synchronization does is it takes a picture at the end of your exposure, and the only time you'd really want it is if you're doing tricks with night photography where there's a moving subject, you want to illuminate them at the end of the frame instead of the beginning of the frame. Otherwise, you're going to be either turning your flash off or turning it on. Now, there's no real need to ever select off here because you can always just push the flash down like that and then the flash will be off physically. So pretty much you can just always leave flash on. Let's talk about flash exposure compensation because by default when you take a flash picture, the camera is going to look at the scene and be like, oh, you need a whole bunch of light. I'm going to just fire off this super bright flash and blind everybody and blow everybody's face out. And I find that the default flash setting is almost always too much, and I almost always benefit by dialing it back a little bit. So to adjust the flash exposure compensation, here's what you're going to do. Just hit that flash icon on the directional pad there, and now see in the bottom right corner, that's showing you your flash exposure compensation. So I'm just going to hit that and then move the main dial to increase or decrease the flash exposure compensation. And I like it to be at about -1 1/3. I find that just generally improves your picture quality. White balance is another thing you don't have to worry about. So feel free to skip this section, but if you want to adjust the white balance on the camera, it usually gets it right. You'll hit that Q button. Look at this icon on the upper right here. It says AWB by default for auto white balance. Now you can change the white balance to select whatever mode best suits your lighting condition. The icons are pretty self-explanatory. If you're getting pictures where everything has a weird tint to it, it's probably the white balance, and that's how you could manually fix it. But if you shoot RAW, it's really easy to fix it later, or even if you shoot JPEG. Let's talk about how to record videos with this camera. This camera has a dedicated video mode that you should use. So I'll push that mode dial in the middle there, and then twist it over to the video camera. Now it's in video mode, and I can start recording by just hitting the record button there. And that's pretty much all you need to know. The camera will pretty much do everything else for you. There are a couple of tricks I want to show you though. For one, you can record video in manual mode. I'll hit the Q button here, and this top icon, if I touch that, I can select between movie mode, movie manual exposure, and then time-lapse movie mode. Time-lapse is, of course, take a video over a long period of time, like an hour, and kind of speed things up. So that's how you get through the 3 different modes. This camera actually does not have an interval timer. The closest thing is the time-lapse thing. If you do want an interval timer, get the remote shutter trigger that I discussed at the end of this video. This is it. It's right here. I guess we're at the end of the video. This is the remote shutter trigger you want that will add that intervalometer feature to it. It should be around $20. Go to this link here, sdp.io/m5trigger. It's going to connect to the USB port on the side of your camera. If you're reading Stunning Digital Photography, you'll see I make a couple references to mirror lockup. You don't have to do mirror lockup on this camera. It's a mirrorless camera, therefore it has no mirror. Just wanted you to know that. You can use Wi-Fi to transfer pictures from your camera over to your smartphone, and that makes it easy to post pictures to Instagram or Facebook even when you're traveling. So let's show you how to get that set up. The first step is to get this Canon app there. You see the icon. Get that installed, and I already have it installed. It's called Canon Camera Connect. As you start up the app, you'll see it says camera not connected. First thing you'll need to do is to get the camera to connect to the device. And the easiest way to do that is to push this wireless button on the right of the camera there. So you'll push that, and the camera will fire up, and look for other devices with Bluetooth. So what it's done is it's talking to my phone now, and what I'll need to do to connect to the camera is to connect to the wireless access point that it's set up for me. So the SID is the name of the network there. If you have an Android phone, this might happen for you automatically, but if you have an iPhone, you'll just have to do it manually. You can go into the Wi-Fi settings here. It says choose a network. I'll select this Canon network, and then I have to type in the password that I see back there, and then I can click join. Now that I'm connected, I'll switch back to the Camera Connect app. The app is now connected to the camera, and it's going to ask me some questions about it, like use a new location log to start adding locations to images on the camera. What this will do is use the GPS in your smartphone to tag pictures here. And then if you load them into Adobe Lightroom or another photo editing app that supports GPS, it can show you all your pictures on a map, which I absolutely love. So I'm definitely going to say yes to that. This takes me into the location information tab, and I can turn that on. It does use a little bit of batteries. It's telling me because I have an iPhone that I have to grant it permissions. This won't happen exactly the same way on an Android phone. It's actually much easier. So I'll hit the settings button here, and you can see Camera Connect, location permission is set to never. So I have to select that and then set it to always. And you can see it has permission to access my photos, so it can save photos in the log. I'll hit the settings. Let me switch back to the Camera Connect app. Okay, so now I can actually hit begin logging. Great. So now it's already recording GPS information, and when I take pictures here, I can get that GPS synchronized. Going back here, we can push images on camera to actually view all the pictures that I've taken. So let's select that, and you can see this slightly out of focus picture here. It's not going to show you the full resolution images. It's doing it to be fast about it. But it's good enough that you can find the right picture and then push this button here to download it to your camera. When you download it, it is downloading the full image. Actually, that was a video file. It's downloading the video file for me. So whether it's a video or a still, it's going to work. So it saved it, and now I just need to go into whatever app I want to use for sharing, like Instagram maybe. And if I add a picture, there you can see picture that I took with Justin. Well, that one didn't turn out, but you get the idea. That's how it works. It all happens pretty quickly. When you're done here, you can turn the camera off. They will continue to talk via Bluetooth, and that allows you to connect to a different Wi-Fi network, because when you connect to this camera's Wi-Fi network, you're no longer going to be able to browse the web and stuff. So my phone automatically connected back to the home network here, and I can once again get internet access. Canon, thank you. The Wi-Fi actually works pretty well. Your memory card is like your digital film, and you will eventually use it all up and run out of space. If you do that, you can load them all onto your computer, then back up those pictures to a different location in case there's a fire or something. You don't want to lose any. And then you can format your card so you can reuse it. To format the card, I'll hit the menu button. I'll go over to the wrench icon, page 1, and then I can do format. I'll select format there and click OK, and now it's going to format the card and delete all the pictures that are on it. I don't want to do that right now, but if you were to click OK there, it would clear it out. Now, if you accidentally format your card and you want to unformat it and get all your pictures back, visit this link, sdp.io/photorec. It's a completely free tool that can recover your images from a memory card or even from a computer hard drive. Let's talk about how to customize the buttons. I kind of showed you this in the back button focus section, but I'll show it to you one more time. Hitting the menu button to get into the menus here. I'm going to scroll to the right until we get to this little camera icon with the lines underneath it. I'll select Others here and Custom Controls. And here you can scroll through 3 different options for the different buttons that you want to customize. This changes your shutter button, in case you want to do back button focus. This changes the behavior of these different dials. And then the last option here customizes the last few buttons. You can select this and then customize either this MFN button here. You can customize the 4 different parts of the directional pad here, the D-pad, and you can also customize this button here on the front, right there. So the number of options you can pick is a little bit limited, but you can do some really useful things. So if I select that, I can select exactly what that's going to do for me. Another customization you might want to make is turning off that beeping sound, that focus confirmation. I hate it. You can see that it's focused because of the green. Hit the menu button here. Go to the wrench icon, page 3, and then beep. Turn that beep to off. You can see I already turned it off because that's how much I hate it. It's terrible if you're a wedding photographer and everybody's in the aisles like beep, 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 beep. Another thing you might want to do is to set copyright information on your camera. Now, in most places, your image is copyrighted as soon as you take it, but you can add your name to each of the images automatically, and that can help somebody find you if you lose your camera. So, menu, wrench icon, page 4, I'll go to copyright info, and then I can enter the author's name and just tap it in here. Fine, I'll just be Toby because I don't feel like backspacing. Good enough. Menu is okay. So now I can go up and display the copyright info, Toby Nordgrupp. Those menus can be really confusing. There's a lot of different menu items. If you have a hard time finding your favorite menu items, add them to a custom menu called My Menu. To set up My Menu, you'll hit the menu button, and then you'll go all the way to the right to this green star icon here. The first thing you'll do is you'll add a My Menu tab. Select OK. So now you have your first tab, and then you'll select Setup. Now you're going to select the menu items that you want on that tab. Maybe you frequently change the image quality and the display mode. Maybe those are the 2 things you do. I'll hit the menu button to go back, hit it again. So now as I'm scrolling through the menus, I can quickly jump over to the star icon here, and I see those 2 menu items ready to go with no sorting through. A couple of weeks from now, you'll realize you're going into the menus regularly. Those items, instead of hunting for them, stick them on My Menu, and it'll save you so much time. I want to give you a couple of tips for saving power on this camera, because the battery is kind of small. You can definitely run out of batteries halfway through. I like it in its default setting, but it does use a lot of power. So the first thing I'd like to do is to go into the wrench icon, page 2, and go to Eco Mode. Eco Mode, I don't know that it's saving the planet or anything, but it is saving you some battery power. Turn that on. You'll see that the camera will power down a little bit faster. Oh, look, it just got dim really quickly there. That's its way of saving some power. If you're trying to get through a long day, that's going to save you a lot of trouble. You can see display will turn off until it reactivates. So it does get annoying when you have Eco Mode turned on. In fact, I'm just going to turn it back off. Another thing you can do is to turn the screen brightness down. That will save you some power. Next, I would turn off automatic image review that plays back your images. You don't really need it because what you see is what you get with this electronic viewfinder, so you already know if you nailed the shot or not. Go to the camera icon, page 2, go to image review, and just turn that off. Together, those things should save you quite a bit of power and just improve your chances of getting through the day. Would still recommend getting a second battery. Now, Canon might occasionally release firmware updates for this camera, but your camera's not going to like pop up a notification that says there's a new firmware update. Just go to the Canon website for your local country and search for EOS M5 firmware updates and see if there are any. It's the support page for the EOS M5. There's a firmware tab there that you can click and just see. Right now there aren't any, but at some point there's definitely going to be a firmware update, and that's the only way to know about it. I do want to talk about adapting Canon lenses before we go any further. Your kit probably came with a single EOS M lens. Now, Canon makes big DSLRs. They have for decades, and they have a massive variety of lenses, but you can't just take one of these DSLR lenses and put it on there. It doesn't fit. you need the EF-M adapter, which costs you about $200, or you can get a knockoff version that's like $40 and works okay. Just like a lens, it has a white dot here that lines up with the white dot here. You line those up, you'll twist it to lock it in, and now you have a regular Canon DSLR mount. You can take the one that's a red dot on this lens, line it up with the red dot here, and then twist it. You can use either full frame EF lenses or APS-C EF-S lenses, and they work pretty well. The autofocus isn't exactly what you'd get on a full DSLR, but it's actually really fast and does the job, and that opens up your world to just hundreds of different specialized lenses. So I wanted to introduce you to that and show you just how easy it was to use. You can also adapt to non-Canon lenses, but you won't get autofocus. So if you have like an old FD lens or just about any type of like an old Pentax lens or something, you can probably get an adapter that will allow you to stick it on this camera. Like I said, you won't have autofocus, you won't have control over the aperture, you won't have any electronic control over it, but it will work, provided you manually focus and manually set the aperture. One setting that you need to change is to allow the camera to shoot without a lens, because it's going to think there's no lens attached. So I hit the menu button here. I'm going to go over to the custom settings icon here, select CFN2 others, and go over to the third option, which is release shutter without lens. I'm going to turn that to enable. So now the camera will fire basically with no lens that it knows about. Now I want to cover some accessories that you can get for your M5 that will make your life much easier. I mentioned it before, but software, you're going to have hundreds, thousands of pictures that you need to sort through, and finding those pictures later, doing light editing, can make a huge difference in your photography. And Adobe Lightroom is what everybody uses, pros, amateurs alike. I suggest getting it bundled with Photoshop in the Creative Cloud Photography plan, which is less than $10 a month in the US. SDP.io/Adobe deal will get that for you. And of course, I have a book on Lightroom, so check that out. I would strongly suggest getting an extra battery for this camera. The battery life is pretty good, but you will run out of batteries at some point, so buy an extra battery, keep it charged, and throw it in your bag. I would only get the original battery. I would not get a knockoff battery. The knockoff batteries, in my experience, die suddenly and sporadically, and that's terrible. So visit stp.io/LPE17 to pick that up. If you're going to be traveling with it, the charger that comes with it is a little bit bulky, and it doesn't USB charge. In fact, this camera also doesn't USB charge. But we all kind of travel around with USB battery packs, and we have USB chargers in our car. If you want to be able to charge the battery via USB, here's a USB charger for the battery, stp.io/M5charge. It's also really small. I carry one with me. It slips in my bag. It takes up less room. If you want to do macro photography, Canon does sell you a macro lens, but what I recommend people do is instead get extension tubes. Chapter 11 in my book, Chapter 12 in my book, Stunning Digital Photography, shows you how to use these extension tubes to get incredible close-ups with unlimited amounts of detail with the smallest subjects. It's super fun. It's a great rainy day project, and some good extension tubes will cost you less than $40. I think these are like $25 on Amazon. So go to stp.io/mtubes, and then Chapter 12 and SDP will teach you how to use them. I mentioned this remote shutter trigger a couple of times. It comes in a variety of different brand names because it's some Chinese company manufactures it, and then other companies slap their name on it. But it looks like this. We have like 3 or 4 of them. They work fantastically, and they're less than $20, so much cheaper than the Canon branded one. stp.io/M5 trigger. That gives you a remote shutter trigger, so you don't have to move the camera by pressing the shutter. It will also allow you to lock the shutter open for bulb mode, and it comes with an intervalometer, so you could make a manual, high-quality time-lapse. That's a feature that this camera seems to lack. A couple of lenses you might want to consider. Your kit lens is a good lens. If you want to go wider angle, maybe you're shooting streets in Europe or you want to do wide-angle landscapes, check out their 11 to 22 at that link there. Super wide-angle stuff. More telephoto, things like sports and portraits, get the 55 to 200 at that link. And if you want like a walking around lens that's great in low light and is really small and makes the camera almost pocketable, pick up the 22 millimeter f2 lens, great in low light, at stp.io/M22. And here's a link to that adapter I talked about, stp.io/EFM. That's the like real Canon one, but like I said, there is a generic version that's quite a bit cheaper. If you're thinking about making prints, here's a link to a video where we reviewed more than a dozen different print providers in the US to find out who made the best high quality prints online. sdp.io/printed is that video, but we found that MPix is good, mpix.com. I'm just a customer, I don't have a relationship with them, but they make the best prints. If you're looking for a tripod, here's a cheap $50 tripod that we really like, the Dolica tripod. Visit that link to pick that up. Or if you want a higher quality travel tripod, this is a really lightweight camera, so you don't need a big heavy tripod, but we love the Manfrotto Be-Free. It's more expensive, several $100s, but if you travel with it and you're carrying it around all day, you're going to be glad that you got that nice carbon fiber one, sdp.io/befree. Finally, this was a lot of information. I hope it helped you. To pay me back, just hit the subscribe button. You'll see free videos that we release covering all sorts of photography topics, product reviews, and every Thursday at 5 o'clock Eastern Time, we will review your pictures live. That's all completely free. And, of course, I have lots of books that you can buy. This is a much faster way to get started making fantastic pictures than trying to poke around unorganized YouTube videos. My content is extremely structured, and we walk through the basics and everything you need to know, and I promise it will do so much for your pictures, even if you just work through chapter 1. It's incredibly cheap, especially compared to all this expensive camera gear. The ebook's just $10. sdp.io/store to buy any of those books, or just search for my name on Amazon, Tony Northrup. Thanks so much. If you have follow-up questions or tips for other people, write a comment down below, share it with your friends, etc. Bye.